Hi guys! We are learning about finding all the zeros of a polynomial function today. And please make sure that you watch the video on how to use the graphing calculator through the MCA website before you start this video. Let's get started. We have the polynomial function f of x is equal to x cubed minus 8x squared plus 11x plus 20. We want to find all the zeros for this. How do we know how many zeros we're going to find? That's how many solutions we have. And what we do is we look at the degree of the polynomial function, and the degree is the highest exponent. Well, our highest exponent is 3, which means we will have at most 3 zeros. So let's get going. We need to go to our graphing calculator, okay? So we're going to go to Google. Okay, so you should be at Google right now. Next, we're going to type in MCA calculator. Standalone calculators, we're going to click on that. So what we've done is we've gone to Google, we type in MCA calculator, and now we click on standalone calculators. We see the grade 8 and 11 graphing calculator, so we hit enter on that. We hit start. We hit start again. And we see the graphing calculator right here, so we click on that. We now go to y equals. And now we need to type in our function. So we'll start over here on the left side. We have x to the third power. So remember, I talked about in that video that exponent is that caret top right there to the third power. And then we arrow over minus 8. X again is right here. And now I'm going to use the squared button. That automatically means we don't have to arrow over. Plus 11x, so 11x, I think it's plus 20. I have it all entered in, x cubed minus 8x squared plus 11x plus 20, and now I'm going to graph. Okay, so we can't see where how high this goes up to, and that's because our y-intercept is actually at y equals 20, okay? And so I know it's going to go way up there, and in another video one day maybe I'll show you how to mess with your window, and if you want to experiment with that, if you feel pretty savvy with that, you go ahead with that. But we can leave it for now because all we care about is where this function crosses the x-axis. So I want to find one of the x-intercepts, the zeros. So I'm going to calculate that zero. I'm going to hit second, trace. So the second button is right here, trace. So I've hit second, trace, and now I'm going to hit number 2 for calculating the zero. Right now my cursor is at 0, 20. I can't see it. It's way up here. I need my cursor to be to the left of one of my zeros. I'm going to find this 0 right here. It looks like it's at -1. I'm just going to confirm. So I need an x value on the left of -1. Okay, so I'm going to arrow over. See, x is at -0.6 right now. Y is at 18. I'm going to keep arrowing over. Now I can see it. And now I'm at -1.21. That is to the left. If you like draw a little line up, -1.21 is to the left of -1. So I'm going to hit enter, and it has this nice line for you there. Now I need a line on the right side of that x-intercept. So I'm going to arrow to the right. Okay, and now my x value is at -0.6. Okay, you can't see it because the y is way up there, but the x is to the right of -1. Okay, because -0.6 is about right there. So I hit enter, and then I hit enter again when I see guess, and it tells us that we're at -1, 0. Okay, so that's one of my solutions. X is equal to -1. Okay, so that was step 1. We go to the graphing calculator, we graph the function, and we find 1, 0. Okay. Now you can also trace if you don't like that. The issue with trace is you can't always get to that 0. So that's why I think it's important. Sometimes you can find that 0 just by hitting the trace button, but other times you're just estimating. So that's, again, why I like that feature. Okay, let's get away from the calculator right now. We found that 0 by calculating it on the graphing calculator. And now what we need to do is we need to use that 0, and then we use synthetic division to get a quadratic equation. Okay. So synthetic division, we make our L, we have our -1 that we just found. I'll rewrite it right there. And with synthetic division, we use the coefficients from this polynomial function. So I have 1, -8, 11, and 20. And just keep in mind, remember, if you're missing, you look at the highest exponent, and then you go in decreasing order for your exponents. You need to make sure you have a coefficient represented for each exponent. Okay, so I have a coefficient represented for the 3, that's 1. A coefficient represented for 2, that's -8. For the exponent of 1, that's 11. And then the constant, which is 20. If you had like this one missing, remember you need to put a 0 there. That will happen in your homework. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's do synthetic division. So I'm going to bring down this 1. And now I'm going to multiply 1 times -1, which is -1. And now I'm going to add -8 plus a -1 gives me -9. Okay, now I'm going to multiply -9 times -1, which is a +9. And now I'm going to add 11 plus 9, which is 20. And now I'm going to multiply 20 times -1, which is -20. And now I'm going to add 20 plus -20 gives us 0. And we are very happy that we got 0, because that confirms to us that -1 is indeed a 0. We calculated that right on the graphing calculator. Now what's left over is I have this polynomial function, 1x to the second power. How do I know it's to the second power? Because it's 1 less than the polynomial function we started with. Minus 9x plus 20. Okay, and now we need to factor this problem. Why do we want to factor this problem? Once we get a quadratic equation, so a quadratic equation is something to the second power, and we can solve a quadratic equation many ways. And we try to set it up in this section where you're mainly going to solve it by factoring. But just a friendly reminder, you can also use the quadratic formula to help you as well if you're struggling with factoring. Some of you can factor guess and check. Others of you, I believe, do the factor by grouping way, which I will do right now for you. I'm going to take 1 times 20, and that gives me 20. Okay, because I multiplied the coefficient from this x squared times the constant, which gives me 20. And I want to think, what times what gives me 20 that adds to get this middle term, and that's -9. So I want to think of all my factor pairs of 20. So that's 2 and 10, or 5 and 4. And 5 and 4 are what's going to work for us. Now, if you notice, if I put a 5 and a 4 here, that does not give me -9. So I need both these numbers to be negative, because a negative times a negative gives us a positive, and -5 plus -4 gives us -9 as well. So next one I want to do is I want to rewrite this function as x squared, the first term always. Then this -9 is now broken up into -5x minus 4x. That was the purpose of what we just did over here. And now I keep that 20. And now I'm going to factor by grouping, okay? So I'm going to break this in half. I like to make it a little template like this. Okay, and I want to look at this group and I want to say, what's the GCF of this group? And that's x. And when I divide that x out here, x squared over x gives me 1x left over. And when I divide this x out of here, that gives me -5. And then I look at -4 and 20, And they have a -4 in common. And how do I know to pull the -4 out? Is because this first term here of that group, okay, is negative. So I have to pull a negative out whenever that happens. So I divide by a -4 and divide by a -4. And when I divide a -4 out, that gives me x minus 5. And part of problem solving is to always be thinking, am I doing this right? How do I know I'm doing this right? So if I look at this, okay, -5 and -5, or x minus 5 and x minus 5, they match. And so I know I've done this right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor that out by writing it once. And then I have my leftovers, x and -4. That goes as a factor as well. I have my factors from factoring, and now I need to set those factors equal to 0. So I have x minus 5 is equal to 0, and x minus 4 is equal to 0. I'm going to solve for x by adding 5 to both sides. So that gives me x is equal to 5. And I add 4 to both sides, and that gives me x is equal to 4. And then I don't want to forget about the 0 that I found up here, and that's -1. So here are my 3 solutions, my 3 zeros for the problem above. At this point, if you feel comfortable, go ahead and start your homework, okay? But if you don't feel comfortable, okay, I'm going to do one more problem right now so you can watch through that. Another option for you would be is just a quick check your understanding. You can look at the problem that I'm going to put up there, try it on your own, and then fast forward it and check and see if you got the right answer. We have 2 days on this. So today, really the goal is to watch the videos. And then tomorrow, the goal is to do the homework over it. So it's kind of up to you how you want to focus the next 2 days. All right, let's get going on this next problem. We have f of x is equal to 3x cubed minus 4x squared minus 9x plus 10. So I'm going to go back to my graphing calculator. I'm going to go to y equals, and I'm going to type this in faster now because I've already gone slow with you on how to type that in. So I have 3x to the 3rd power minus 4x squared. Oopsie, and look, I just screwed that up. Minus 9x plus 10. Okay, so I see my function there and I want to calculate a 0. Okay, I'm going to calculate this 0 right here. So I'm going to hit second trace, calculate my 0. This x equals 0 looks like it's on the left of what appears to be 1. Okay, so I'm going to hit enter. Okay, because 0, which is right here, is on the left of 1. And you can see a nice line. You can't see it as well because it's on the axis, but that's okay. Now I'm going to arrow down. Okay, so 1.5 on the x-axis is right there. I got that from right there. That is to the right of x equals 1, which looks like that's what my 0 is. So I hit enter for right bound. And now enter one more time when you see guess. And it shows us that we have a 0 at 1, 0. So x is equal to 1. Okay. Okay, so we just found this x equals 1 by using our graphing calculator. That was step 1. Now what we want to do is we want to use synthetic division to get a quadratic equation. Again, I'm going to go faster through this one because I went slower on the last one. I have 3, -4, -9, and 10. I'm going to bring down the 3. I'm going to multiply this 3 by 1. 3 times 1 is 3. I'm now going to add -4 plus 3, which is -1. I'm going to multiply -1 times 1, which is -1. I'm going to add, okay, -9 plus -1, which is -10. Okay, and now I'm going to multiply -10 times 1, which is -10. And now I'm going to add 10 plus a -10, which gives me 0. And that makes me very happy because indeed 1 is a 0, meaning it's a solution, okay? So now what I have left is I have 3, my coefficient there, x to the second, and I know it's to the second because my highest exponent in the function was cubed, so now it's got to be 1 less, which is second, minus 1x. You don't need that 1 there, but you have to have a minus x, minus 10. So I have that quadratic equation right now. Now I need to find the zeros of that. I need to solve it, and I'm going to try factoring. And just again, a friendly reminder, you can always use the quadratic formula if you need to. So let's find those factors. Again, I'll do factor by grouping with you. If you know guess and check or trial and error, you can do that as well. Factor by grouping, we multiply the coefficient, the first coefficient, by the constant, and that gives us negative 30. We need to think what times what multiplies to get negative 30 that adds to get negative 1. So I need to think of my factor pairs of 30, like what makes up 30? So 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, or 5 and 6. I need to work for both of these, and 5 and 6 are going to be the right one. One of them has to be negative because it's got to multiply to get a negative, and I'm going to make it negative 6. And the reason I'm going to make it negative 6 is because 5 plus a negative 6 gives me negative 1. Okay, so now I'm going to write this down. I have my first one here, 3x squared negative 1x, and I know what's going to happen, so I want to put the 6 first so I can factor it out. So negative 6x plus 5x, that makes our negative 1. And there shouldn't be ones as tricky as this where it works out where you have to put the 6 first, okay? But in this one, I knew that was going to happen. So I'm pretty certain on your homework, it wouldn't matter which way you did it, okay? But I know what's coming, so I know that that 6 has to be there. Okay, and then I have that negative 10. I'm going to break it up into the groups. I want to factor this first group out first. Okay, so I take that 3 and that x out. When I divide out that 3x, that leaves me with an x. And I divide that 3x out. That gives me a negative 2. And here I have a 5 and a negative 10, so that's going to take out a 5. I divide it out. That gives me an x and a negative 2. Okay, so now what I want to do is I know I did it right. I have my x minus 2 matching, so I write that once. Okay, and then I have 3x plus 5. And now I'm going to set both of these factors equal to 0. So I'm going to add 2 to the other side. If I have x minus 2 equals to 0, I'm going to add 2 to both sides to give me x is equal to 2. Okay, and if I have 3x plus 5 equals 0, I'm going to subtract the 5 to both sides. So that gives me 3x equals negative 5. And then I'm going to divide the 3 to both sides. So that gives me x is equal to negative 5 over 3. So I have now my zeros. X is equal to negative 5 over 3. X is equal to 2. And finally, my last 0, x is equal to 1. Okay, you guys, remember, you have 2 days for this. So if you've had enough and you need to break it up and do the homework tomorrow, that's totally okay. I hope if you have any questions, please let your teachers know. And you guys have a wonderful day.